Greetings and welcome. I am Justavor, bringing you what I hope is constructive information on what the system of racism is and how it works, as well as what can be done to replace it with the system of justice. For more information about the purpose and goals of this channel, as well as some basic definitions of words and terms we use in reference to our work, I have included a link below to a video containing this information. An issue non-white people have faced when attempting to solve the problem of racism has stemmed from our miseducation about racism and white supremacy. We are taught that racism is about feelings and attitudes rather than codified actions. The evident truth is that racism is a system, and as Mr. Fuller reminds us, the only functional form of racism is the system of white supremacy. In this video, we will explore possible solutions to the problem that is the system of white supremacy. In the process of solving problems, I have concluded that it is important to be able to sufficiently analyze and succinctly define the problem, as per Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. When it comes to the problem of racism, white supremacy, I have concluded that the most accurate definition of racism is identical to the definition of white supremacy, which is a global system of people who classify themselves as white and who are dedicated to the mistreatment and subjugation of all those they have classified as not white. There are many definitions used for the terms racism and white supremacy. I have concluded that words are very important and that this definition is the most accurate. Some non-white people may ask, is racism really that big a deal? Is racism really the problem? I have concluded that racism is indeed the greatest problem we face in the known universe. For a further discussion on the problem of racism and the subsequent problems caused by the system of white supremacy, I have included a link to a previous video on the subject. As we are reminded by Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., if you do not understand white supremacy, racism, what it is and how it works, everything that you understand will only confuse you. It is understandable that non-white people are confused about what racism is and how it works. Those who practice racism have designed the system to be confusing and use their white power structure to deceive and further confuse their victims. One tactic for spreading confusion has been to make it seem as if non-white people are the experts on racism and that those who classify themselves as white are ignorant when it comes to the subject of racism. If that were true, why have non-white people not yet replaced white supremacy with a system of justice? Three major effects of this deception are that 1. It further confuses non-white people regarding the dynamics of the system of white supremacy. 2. It places the responsibility to end the system solely on the shoulders of non-white people. And 3. It encourages non-white people to spend time and energy teaching suspected racists how to not be racist, when in fact, those suspects are the true experts and are only further preserving their power to practice racism. Which begs the question, is it logical to expect the power group to voluntarily give up their power? After identifying this major problem, the question now becomes, how do we end the system of racism? Another question would be, what are some steps non-white people can take toward ending the system of white supremacy? Some of those steps are: learn what racism is and how it works. Those who practice racism have defined our reality and have used this power to deceive and confuse non-white people about this reality. We must make our own observations based on logic in order to accurately define our reality. This includes learning what the system of racism, white supremacy is, and how it works. Ways to do this include staying in the question lane.
You know, the guys on the corner call it mind games. Yeah. And boy, it ain't no game. It's business. It is super business. And you got to be exact. And you use what I call country logic. I mean, hey, call it like you see it. So you don't let nobody razzle-dazzle you with fancy words. People come out of universities and all like that. Hey, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't make it plain, like Malcolm used to say. Hey, everybody be quiet. Yale University, wherever. Everybody be quiet. Now, repeat what you said and make it plain. Because I'm not going to leave here confused. See, that was Malcolm. That's anybody who wants to become what they call intelligent. Don't let people just keep on talking to you and taking up your time and just saying anything. Have them explain what they mean. And be polite. So you don't have to get belligerent, because you got all the cards. You're holding them all. How are you holding all the cards? Asking questions. The person who asks the questions always has the advantage. Remember that.
Another way to learn what racism is and how it works is to learn to identify the behaviors and patterns of those who practice racism. What tactics do they use to maintain the system of white supremacy? Adopt a constructive code of thought, speech, and action. We have concluded that white supremacy is a global system and that maintaining and refining the system takes a codified effort on the part of those who practice racism. A way to counter the system of racism is to adopt a code of thought, speech, and action that is focused on replacing white supremacy with justice. Justice, as per the code, means balance between people, guaranteeing that no person is mistreated, and guaranteeing that the person who needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Mr. Fuller has created such a code with his United Independent Compensatory Code System concept, also known as the Compensatory Counter-Racist Code, or the Code. I would suggest studying Mr. Fuller's code book to become more familiar with and less confused about what the system of racism is, how it works, and what can be done to counter it with a system of justice. Most of these suggestions for ending racism come directly from the code book. A major impact resulting from the system of racism is conflict between non-white people. This not only further spreads disunity among victims of white supremacy, but often leads to someone being hurt, dead, or placed in greater confinement. This divide and conquer tactic benefits most the white supremacists who are in charge of the very system non-white people suffer under and are often in conflict over. An example of the codified behavior of divide and conquer that white supremacists engage in can be seen in the infamous Willie Lynch letter, supposedly delivered as a speech in 1712. The letter or speech explained the goals of enslaving people by starting with small differences and making them bigger, by turning their victims against one another for the benefit of the white supremacists. Many people doubt the authenticity of the story about Willie Lynch actually delivering this speech, or if he existed at all. What is evident to have existed is the codified behavior of dividing victims of racism for the purposes of domination and white control. This behavior still exists today. Thus, Mr. Fuller suggests that non-white people minimize conflicts with other non-white people, effectively countering Willie Lynch syndrome and the tactic of divide and conquer. Ways to minimize conflicts, as suggested by Mr. Fuller, are no contact, no conflict. One cannot be in conflict if they are not in contact. Getting comfortable with the idea of being alone. People are naturally social, and many become uncomfortable when they are alone. However, attempting to replace white supremacy with justice can lead to alienation from other, more confused victims of racism, or being in major conflict with other victims when in contact. Therefore, being comfortable with the idea of being alone minimizes opportunities of being placed in situations that may lead to conflict with other victims. Only come into contact when the focus is something constructive. And by constructive, according to the code, means that which replaces white supremacy with justice. If one is lonely, Mr. Fuller suggests going where people are. Again, people are naturally social and may become sad from being alone and feeling disconnected from others. Mr. Fuller suggests that at those times, one should go where people are, but the moment things become non-constructive, one should remove themselves from the situation. Only speaking about racism with those who want to speak about racism. Speaking about racism with some victims can easily and quickly lead to conflicts when one or more victims do not wish to speak about the problem of white supremacy. It is constructive to only speak about racism when the time is appropriate and only with those who wish to speak about racism. It is my opinion that one of the most constructive aspects of the code is the concept of VGQ, Victims Guaranteed Qualification.
Any victim of racism, any person of color, is guaranteed the duty. You guarantee yourself the duty to say whatever you think will be best to say about race, racism, and or counter-racism. And I made up a term that covers that called Victims Guaranteed Qualification. You, just by being a prisoner of war, being a victim of racism, guarantees you the qualification to say, to advance any viewpoint that you have. I'm just saying that generally to the whole world audience now. I mean, that's a given.
The code suggests non-constructive behaviors that victims of racism should immediately stop engaging in. These are referred to as the 10 basic stops. The 10 basic stops are: 1. Stop snitching. 2. Stop name-calling. 3. Stop cursing. 4. Stop gossiping. 5. Stop being discourteous. 6. Stop stealing. 7. Stop robbing. 8. Stop fighting. 9. Stop killing. And 10. Stop squabbling among yourselves and asking the racist white supremacists to settle it. I strongly suggest studying the 10 basic stops in the code book for a more in-depth understanding of the concepts and terms related to the 10 basic stops. Dr. Francis Cress Welsing added additional stops to the 10 basic stops.
Stop using and selling drugs to one another. Stop making black children think that as children, they can be adequate mothers and fathers. All right. Stop pretending that racism and white supremacy does not exist. Stop throwing down trash where black people live, work, and play. Yes. If you're willing to live around trash, you're thinking of yourself as trash. Every black person needs to get a PhD in broom studies. Stop allowing racism and white supremacy dividing black, brown, red, and yellow people. Okay.
By honorable mention, I would also suggest that it is suggested that non-white people stop showing off and stop victim blaming. The ones most to blame are those in charge, the white supremacists. Establish and maintain black self-respect.
But I say self-respect is more powerful than a nuclear weapon. See, as a black female, I cannot have 100% respect for myself if I don't respect black men. Because I was made as a human being, 50% genetic material from a black mother, 50% genetic material from a black father. So if I say I don't respect black men, my self-respect score can be only 50% max, and that's not passing. You see, but the conditions of the system of racism, white supremacy, have destroyed black male-female relations. In other words, you can do that if you just systematically control whether a man can have a job and be sufficiently employed so he can function as a husband and function as a father. You have destroyed black male-female relations. And that's the importance of understanding system structure of racism, white supremacy that covers economics, education, entertainment, labor law, politics, religion, sex, and more. Covers all areas of people activity.
Check one's own anti-blackness. The system of white supremacy is, by default, anti-black in its nature. Non-white people in general, and black people in particular, have been conditioned by the white supremacists to engage in behavior that goes against the best interests of non-white people. This behavior reflects the anti-black nature of racism. It is suggested that non-white people check this behavior by becoming aware of their own anti-black behavior, being slow to criticize non-white people while keeping in mind that those most to blame are the people in power, the white supremacists, as well as demonstrating patience and compassion with other non-white people, especially with those classified as black. Page 251 of the Code Book asks, what is the correct way to end white supremacy, racism? The Code Book suggests two things. 1. Non-white people putting to use the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept. And 2. White people doing everything that is necessary to practice the quality relationship requirements in regard to non-white people at all times, in all places, in all areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Quality relationships, according to the code, are described as a total absence of pretense, dishonesty, deception, falsehood, etc., in regards to everything that people say and do, and all of their interactions with each other in every area of activity, and that all these activities produce a constructive result. There are so many other suggestions mentioned in the Code Book. These are just a few steps towards ending white supremacy and producing a system of justice. If you would like an even better understanding of the code and how it works, please visit producejustice.com to order the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. There are many constructive suggestions for ending the system of white supremacy, and Mr. Fuller's code book and its word guide act as guides to getting and keeping on code. To view a video of Mr. Fuller explaining the basics of the code, I have included a link in the description for the interview by Danny Queen when Mr. Fuller appeared on Color Me Poetry. If you feel this content is constructive and worth your time and energy, please subscribe to support the making of more content in the future. I am Justavor, and I am still learning. Thank you for watching. Until next time.
Let me say something that gets to the very crux of the matter, and this may be offensive for some to hear who are not on the side that we're on. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.
Say that again.
Let me say it one more time for those of you who didn't hear me. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.